Holland and into Germany. On D-Day, the First Hussars were the armored support for the infantry of the Regina Rifles, the Winnipeg Rifles, and elements of the 1st Canadian Scottish. They had 2 squadrons of the bizarre swimming tanks, never before tested in battle. The planned landing at low tide went awry, and both tanks and landing craft were lost on the heavily mined German beach obstacles. Other tanks, reaching shallow water, stopped to engage the beach guns and were swamped by the rising sea. But their presence kept the heavy infantry losses from being even worse. But then the surviving tanks had trouble getting off the beaches, past guns, seawalls, and anti-tank ditches. The unsung heroes of the day were Royal Engineers manning armored bulldozers who cleared away the obstacles. Of several British, American, and Canadian armored units using DD tanks, only the Hussars launched at sea, but they paid a heavy price for their bravery. Crews who abandoned sinking or waterlogged tanks were machine-gunned in the water. Some Hussars never reached French soil. For those who did, it still seems a little unreal. Here's how Max Lees and Charles McLeod remember it.
Well, it was very exciting. At first, it was like another scheme coming along until you started to see a few bodies around the place. Then you realized this was for real. But we had quite a time getting off the beach, and we were probably an hour and a half late getting onto the ground with the infantry.
Would you explain that? What do you mean by getting off the beach?
Well, originally there were to be 3 exits. The engineers ran into a lot of trouble and finally got one opened around 9:30, 10 o'clock that we went over.
Well, was this over a seawall or through German defenses or what?
This was through the sand dunes at the back of the beach, which ran right along our front, and over a marshy ground, which the engineers had to bridge. The Germans blown it. There was no way across to the ground immediately in our front.
Well, they'd made ditches and things out of it then.
Yes, there were tank traps right through the place.
Charlie, what was your landing like?
Well, we floated our tanks in because of the fact that it was so rough. I think that most